Could the flutter of a butterfly's wings in Brazil eventually cause a storm in Texas, America? It sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that even the smallest action happening somewhere in the world could become the first step toward a much bigger event? A decision made in China could trigger a chain of events that affects someone thousands of miles away. This is the mysterious idea behind the butterfly effect. Back in the 1960s, a meteorologist named Edward Lorenz was trying to predict what the weather would be like in the coming days. To make his predictions, he entered different measurements, such as temperature, humidity, wind speed, and air pressure into his computer. One day, Lorenz wanted to check whether his prediction would remain accurate. So, he ran the same simulation again, but this time he made a tiny change to the initial data, just a small difference in the numbers. For example, imagine the original data was 2.123456. Lorenz ran his weather simulation using this number and got one prediction. But when he ran the simulation again, he entered 2.123 instead, removing just a few decimal places. That tiny change seemed insignificant, but the result was shocking. The new simulation produced a completely different weather pattern from the first one. In the original prediction, the model suggested that the sun would shine. But with that tiny change in the starting data, the new simulation predicted heavy rainfall. That's when Lorenz realized something extremely important. Weather is incredibly sensitive to tiny changes in its starting conditions. If such a tiny difference could completely change the prediction after some time, then predicting the weather far into the future could be incredibly difficult. This led Lorenz to develop an important idea in chaos theory, what we now call sensitive dependence on initial conditions. Later, while explaining this concept, Lorenz famously used a powerful example. Does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? He wasn't saying that a real butterfly literally causes a tornado. He was explaining that a tiny change in one part of a complex system can eventually lead to a huge difference in the final outcome. That idea became popularly known as the butterfly effect. What makes chaos theory even more fascinating is that even though these events may seem completely random, there can still be patterns hidden within the chaos. In other words, even when something looks random, scientists can sometimes find patterns and use them to make predictions. For example, you randomly clicked on this video, but the fact that you stayed and watched it for this long might not be completely random. Maybe it was the editing, the topic, the way the story was presented, or even the first few seconds of the video that influenced your decision to keep watching. And in a way, your life works the same way. Something you do today could affect your family, your friends, a stranger you meet, or even someone you've never met before. You might not even realize that your smallest actions are creating consequences somewhere else. Whether we know it or not, we are all living inside the butterfly effect. So, if the tiny movement of a butterfly can potentially change the course of events, then imagine what you could change with your own actions.